So there's been a real battle of wills commencing over this past few months, really, ever since Trump first, came back to office, between Harvard University, the oldest university in America, and the Trump administration. Now, obviously, as we can see here, a lot of this is off of events that we'll remember before Trump actually, got his second term in office, because we were obviously, after October 7th, we were witness to all manner of protests across campuses, mostly in America, but of course, as we'll know ourselves, very much here as well in Europe and Britain, all these, pro-Palestine, and in some cases, even pro-Hamas. It
is remarkable how Hamas can kill like 1,300 people. Then suddenly there are people yelling, "Yeah, from the river to the sea." I mean, I don't like weighing in on this debate, but it is hard to separate this kind of activism from just pro-terrorism.
Oh yeah,
this is and I'm trying to be charitable, but come on,
Anyway. From the river to the sea, what, the River Potomac to the Atlantic Ocean? What we're talking about? What are we talking about here?
Well, I think part of that certainly comes between the fact that, well, okay, if you are, of course, pro-Palestine, then it means that, well, what is the Palestinian line of defense against the things that are being done to it? And then that naturally means, well, you have to put your faith in the prescribed terrorist organization. And because that's really the first line of defense. And so that's where the two... Now, really, what I'm, obviously talking about here is not necessarily... I'm not suggesting on a personal level that fidelity to one particular, whether it's Palestine or Israel, in any way for an American citizen, for someone who is actually American, means being any more or less American. Fundamentally, being for America and being born American makes you American. However, it is interesting to point out that really this war on Harvard is not to do so much with the American students, but more to do with the fact that there's an enormous number of foreign students who have been invited in on visas, come over as a guest to America to participate in their wonderful, well, I say wonderful. I'm more doubtful about that after looking into the recent antics of Harvard, but for the sake of argument, a higher form of education than they could have possibly achieved in whichever country they come from.
Somehow they were radicalized against the United States.
Yes.
Incredible.
If they weren't already, of course.
Yeah.
So we have here, this all naturally boils down to the fact that eventually what you're getting is a statement like this from Chrissy Noem from Homeland Security, where, amongst other things, she says, "I'm writing to inform you that effective immediately, Harvard University's Student and Exchange Visitors Program is revoked. And as I explained to you in my April letter, it is a privilege to enroll foreign students, and it is also a privilege to employ aliens on campus. All universities must comply with Homeland Security requirements. Failure to comply with multiple requests," because that's actually where this started when she refers to... So I just looked up.
What's funny?
Nothing. I wish I had mine. The thing is that really what originally in April, all the government actually asked for was, look, can you please give us the names and information of foreign students on your campus who have been engaging in anti-American and pro-terrorist sympathies? And Harvard's like, absolutely not. How dare you?
We're going to defend our foreign terrorists. Thank you very much.
There are foreign terrorists, and we're proud of them.
That's very weird.
I hope in America, just like in Britain or in a lot of Europe, if you're not actually Muslim or Jewish, you look upon that sort of forever war in the Holy Land, in the Levant, and you just look upon it aghast without a dog in the fight.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I hope
I do.
I hope that most Americans, again, if you're not Jewish or Muslim, you just think.
So, in America, Israel has a particularly kind of important place in.
Of course.
So I guess you say something of the national mythology at this point.
Yeah.
So it's not a neutral subject for them.
No, you've been told ever since the 40s that Israel's interests are your best interests.
It's not just about interest. There's a huge number of evangelicals who view Israel's existence as a part of a kind of revelatory mission.
Certainly, yeah, that's true.
So it goes beyond merely strategic interest.
There is a stripe of Christianity which is essentially pro-Zionist.
Yes.
Sure, okay.
But this is really, so when it says, while perpetuating an unsafe environment that is hostile to Jewish students, promotes pro-Hamas sympathies, and employs racist diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, and so you have lost this privilege.
So, right. I mean, Harvard are like, well, you got us there. I mean, we do all of those things.
Yeah, that's the thing we're proudest of, if anything.
Right. That's how we got our job doing this. You know?
And you have to bear in mind as well that obviously when Trump, gained his second term in office, obviously, and said, look, this is the end of DEI. This is the end of it. We are killing it here and now, as far as we can throughout America. And so Harvard said, well, we'll just rebrand then. And
that's not how that works.
Right. But what I find so bizarre, I suppose, about this is the fact, because this is the Harvard Crimson, the Commie Crimson, the newspaper of Harvard University, the student newspaper. Yeah. And the fact that they just say, oh, well, we're not going to do that, and here's our entire plan for how we're not going to go along with all of this.
Well, thank you for publishing that.
It's just
it's going to make catching you out so much easier.
The great tactical minds of Harvard, clearly, yes, from their education there.
Again, it's something they're just proactively proud of.
Yeah, totally. Totally proud of it.
Yeah. And, so this new directive, this new... from the White House means that the F visas and the J visas, so these are visas relating to all international students, that's the F visa, and the J ones are foreigners who are there on exchange visits, or visitors, just on the visiting. And so this here means that before you know it, you're going to have potentially thousands upon thousands of foreign students from Harvard, possibly over 8,000, in a position where they either will be deported because their visas no longer... Because the tactic is, okay, well, if you don't give us this information and tell us who these people are that have been engaging in this activity, then we'll just send them all home and you'll lose all of this money that you're getting. That
is fascinating, because you've got to ask the sort of foreign student body there, why did you decide to get involved in American activism? Like, what were you thinking? You were told, oh no, we're going to go out and march for human rights or something. It's like, yeah, but dude, I'm here to get my degree. I'm here to get an education, surely. And now you're a pawn in a war against the Trump administration by the deans of Harvard. It's like, this isn't serving you, is it? You should have just kept your bloody head down and got on with your studies.
There's one, actually, if you'll just indulge this anecdote. Back when I was at university, we had an exchange student come to us. I won't say from where, but we had an exchange student come to us. And within 2 weeks of arriving from a foreign country, they were very proud about the fact that it says, oh, yes, I was in London last weekend protesting Brexit. It's like, you've been here 2 weeks. We're having a really delicate, really volatile conversation in our country about the future of our country. Yeah. And this random foreigner just thinks that she can get involved with.
There were absolutely loads of them as well. Like, I remember the Brexit protests, and you'd see like interviews where it's like, I'm Spanish and I'm against Brexit. It's like, I don't care what your opinion on Brexit is. I mean, you're not even eligible to vote in the bloody referendum, so shut up,
But because they see themselves as universal citizens, they see all struggles, all political questions as universal questions that they have a right to an opinion on, and not as a national conversation particular to national peoples.
I can't even imagine going over to another country and after a couple of weeks being like, yeah, I'm going to get involved. Yeah. It's not my business.
I wouldn't dare to.
Yeah, I'd feel embarrassed.
It'd be embarrassing to do that. Right. I remember all during the Brexit time, I was working in Westminster or Pimlico, Victoria area, right by there. And I could walk to Parliament Square at lunchtime easily, and did loads of times. Not every single day, but multiple times a week. And anyway, you remember that guy that was just permanently there?
Steve Bray.
Steve Bray, yeah. I spoke to him a number of times, and and most days when there was sort of, again, that sort of perma protesting going on, and you just listen out, and it's all foreign languages or at least foreign accents. There's a guy that used to wear this big Boris head. Remember that? For a while, anyway, he would wear this big fake.
I don't remember that one.
No.
Spitting image style
right.
Boris head, and he was like, I can't remember exactly what he was, but he wasn't British. I think he was like South American or something, or Spanish or something like that.
Yeah.
In the end, it turned out, and it was like the temerity
Right.
of that.
Well, absolutely. And so the Donald did what he does best, rolled up his sleeves and posted on Truth, because that's so he says, why isn't Harvard saying that almost 31, it's actually 27, but it's fine, of their students are from foreign lands, and yet those countries, some not at all friendly to the United States, pay nothing towards their students' education, nor do they ever intend to. Nobody told us that. We want to know who these foreign students are, a reasonable request since we give Harvard billions of dollars, but Harvard isn't exactly forthcoming. We want those names and countries. Harvard has $52 million. Use it, and stop asking for the federal government to continue granting money to you.
Right, so Trump's threatening to just turn the taps off.
Yes, he is. I love the use of the term foreign lands. It's so perfectly archaic. It just comes straight from. But yeah.
It's interesting to note that it's a bit different to what goes on in Great Britain, because in Great Britain, it's not that foreign students are subsidised directly by His Majesty's Treasury. It's just that you're charged a lot more.
Yeah, they charge literally twice as much.
Right. So that's a whole different dynamic for us.
That's very interesting.
It means that it's in the university's interest to have as many of them as possible because they make more money, but it's not that they're stealing directly out of the Treasury.
I mean,
the net result is the same, as many foreigners as possible.
Yeah.
But
it can't just be that the US government funds all of Harvard, right? They have to have some sort of private income as well.
Yeah.
They must do.
Sure, well, sponsors, donors, all sorts of things. But it's the fact that Harvard, obviously being one of the oldest and most prestigious universities in America, that it has enough money to actually mount legal battles against the White House on these sorts of questions, which is not an Oh, sorry, I've accidentally... well, this one here. So, I've lost that link, but... Oh, yes, here we are. So, Harvard foreign students face uncertainty, and essentially what's happened is that the US District Judge, Alison Burroughs, has issued a temporary restraining order, and this means that there will be a pause on what the Department of Homeland Security can do, and there's set to be a court hearing on the 29th of May.
Yeah, so Trump is now also at war with the judiciary.
Yes.
Which, I mean, good. He needs to be at war with everyone who's standing in his way. But how exactly did the judges find in their authority the ability to just countermand presidential executive orders?
that's a very good question. I thought that the Patriot Act gave gave Homeland Security not exactly carte blanche, but they were within reason allowed to do what they want. Certainly something like this. I thought Homeland Security could just do it.
But moreover, I thought judges were only the decision makers when cases were brought to them. As in, we're going to take this through the courts, so a legal case has been brought, and the judge has to make a ruling on it. Not just judge wakes up, I don't know what Trump's done, I intercede on that? Like, sorry, do you have the authority to do that? I don't know how this works, but I mean, like, this surely is a question that needs resolving, right?
But Dr. Alan Garber, the president of Harvard, he said that with the stroke of a pen, the government has sought to erase a quarter of Harvard student body.
But a good thing, yeah.
Yes. International students who contribute significantly to the university and its mission.
Well, just the FYI, they do pay tuition fees. I looked it up. Although this may well be reduced by government aid. So, I don't know.
And they do contribute significantly to the disorder.
Yeah.
Yes. The mission of more and more DEI and basically just more and more obstruction of just the general things that the American population are interested in seeing come through. But obviously we have to ask the question, of course, well, this Dr. Alan Garber is the president of Harvard University. Why is he the president? Oh, yes, that's right, because their most recent president, Dr. Claudine Gay, lasted for exactly 3 months because she was found to just have rampant plagiarism.
Wasn't this Chris Rufo's crusade?
All of the work.
Yeah. It was superb work.
Yes. Professional papers from 2001, 2017. So it's over a span of... and they also found as well, even as far back as when she was studying for her PhD back in the 90s. So, determined never to kick a bad habit, as we can see here. And fundamentally, it comes down to the thing that, look, if you're ever complicated, then just go for what America First Auron has to say, which is... I love when they use native as a pejorative. Yes, Bill, America is for Americans. And fundamentally, American education should be tailored to American students and not foreign ones.
Yeah, I mean, literally, Bill Crystal's comment here. Foreigners studying and working here are not damaging to the United States. A virulently nativist administration is what's damaging the United States. Okay, but what does the United States mean in this sentence then? Because if Harvard is being a third of Harvard, or nearly a quarter of Harvard, is populated by non-native students, then they are positions, like Harvard is an institution of limited scope. There are only so many classrooms, there are only so many buildings, there's only so much room that students can actually work in. Then a quarter of those are being used in lieu of Americans occupying those positions. So what does the United States mean if we're talking about nativism being bad for America? The United States must mean some kind of global liberal universal order that is promising something to all mankind. Anyway.
What a perverse, subversive couple of statements that is.
It is, totally.
Foreigners studying and working here are not damaging the United States, full stop. Well, doesn't it depend what they're doing? Surely,
you mean the Chinese spies sending back all of the research that's being done at American universities? That's not damaging.
Not going to take into account what they're saying or doing.
Yeah,
they just...
What does the United States mean then if that's not damaging it, right? You must mean some kind of universal liberal human order.
I'm so glad you brought up the Chinese spies, by the way, Carl, because this is, again, if we talk about the academic independence of Harvard and the mission of Harvard, and, as we say about the fact that,
as much research as possible to China.
The function is what it does. Yeah. Then we have to bear in mind the fact that Republicans, led by committee chair John Mueller, very hard one to pronounce, accused Harvard of hosting and training members of a CCP paramilitary organization. Right, so this...
Jesus Christ. I mean, there's a commitment to, fostering foreign terrorists that we're just going to have public support for terrorism, right? Which is illegal in Britain, obviously. But, people going out there and saying, down with Jews, up with Hamas, whatever it is. But then there's actively training a paramilitary organization of a foreign country.
Yes. Well, this is to do with the Xinjiang Production and Constructions Corp, or the XPCC, and the reason why they are designated in such a way and faced sanctions both in Trump's first term and Biden's term, oddly enough, right? So there's some consistency on what these guys stand for, is that they had a major part in the logistical question of building the Uyghur labor camps.
Oh.
And yet they were just turning up. They were invited to host events at Harvard. They were part of events, some years back. And that seemed to be all fine and in keeping with American values and the good of the American people.
So they're anti-Uyghur Chinese, I take it.
Well, I mean, they were doing terrible things to them.
Just to be clear. Okay. So isn't there any sort of tension between those and the pro-Palestine types? Did they ever clash with each other? I guess not. I guess their mutual enemy, Uncle Sam, comes first and foremost. I guess.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
It's not about how well their views on particular conflicts gel with one another, is it? It's more about the fact that America is always a bad guy.
It's completely irrelevant. It is literally just anti-Americanism.
It is. It is. And so, obviously, what we've also got here is the fact that off the back of such things as this, Trump has threatened to remove the tax exemptions.
Oh, really?
That Harvard has that they were given by the IRS. Going back to the 50s, I think it was. So, yeah, he's willing to play that card.
So Trump is playing hardball with
Oh, yeah, really. Yeah, he's using as much hard power as he can here. And I suppose that means that you have to ask yourself, with all of these sorts of things, between potentially losing all of their foreign students, between the fact that they seem to be implicated in Chinese espionage and even worse things that the Chinese could be accused of, how could it possibly get any worse for Harvard? Right, you get the feeling like it's one of those things, assaults are coming at you from all sides right now. Bloody hell, keep your head down. Everyone just be on your best behaviour. Do the best you can. And please, for the love of God, let's not have the head of our morgue plead guilty for selling human body parts.
Is this real?
This is real. And not only is it real, it's current. It's current. This is this week.
So what?
So what? Right. Well, the what is that Cedric Lodge, 57, admitted that he took parts of donated cadavers after they'd been used for research and sold them rather
Who?
That's a great
Who's
question.
buying that?
So it's not the 18th century where people actually want to do research and they're not allowed to, so you go and get bodies illegally.
I don't think
we don't live in that world anymore. What?
No.
Who's buying the severed heads?
This guy's not emulating Da Vinci. I think this is an entirely... obviously, but totally out of... out of the wishes of the people who've donated the organs as well.
He and his wife sold the parts to a network of body parts dealers. Some of those in the network still face challenges. Jesus Christ!
There are body part dealers.
Yeah, what? Yeah, to what end?
In Massachusetts.
To what end? What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow. Creepy.
I will personally follow developments on this story, ladies and gentlemen, out of sheer morbid curiosity. But as I say, the fact of the matter is that really as well, that Harvard being obviously the most high-profile university in America, it's really important that Trump wins this fight.
Oh, yeah.
It's really important, not only because of its symbolic significance, but also to set the precedent of what is actually acceptable on an American university campus. Like I say, if an actual American citizen feels sympathies towards the pro-Palestinian cause, that's your prerogative. But to just allow thousands upon thousands of foreign students to come and just meddle in your politics in any way.
But also foster a distinctly anti-American sentiment within the university itself. It's like, sorry, this is just not an acceptable thing to do.
And it seems to me from this segment, I'm learning things. Not just your classic student sort of protest disruption, but actually going into sort of the realm of paramilitary stuff. That's
What are you doing?
That's obviously beyond the pale. There must come a point, really, when something has to be done. A line in the sand needs to be drawn. Stelios was telling me something I didn't know about last week, that in Greece, up until fairly recently, they had it. I don't think it was actually a law sort of on their statute books, but it was just sort of a de rigueur thing that the police would never ever go onto university campuses. They would just never do it. I mean, Greece has got a long history with sort of student protests going back decades and decades and decades. But anyway, in recent decades, that was what was done, and so criminals just took it over. It was like
as if it was a church or something, like, you know.
Yeah, or if it was like a criminals embassy or something like that. And he said that there'll be like drug dealers would set up on the campus and everyone knew what was going on, and the police, until recently again, would just never go in there, and so they flourished. And apparently that doesn't happen anymore. The Greeks have sort of come round to it a bit and stomped it out, but
maybe they're not sacred spaces. Maybe the police are allowed in to the universities to clear out the criminals.
A sacred grove for criminals and subversives. But so that's sort of the extreme end of where it goes. If you don't intervene, then somewhere like Harvard or any number of universities across America might end up like just a sort of hive for criminals.
Yes, and leftists.
Yeah, well, same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Venn diagram. Yeah, very interesting.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.